Welcome to Loch Ness Knitting, and thank you for joining us today, and thank you to everybody who's newly joined us. My name's Dwyn Wynn, I'm the owner of Loch Ness Knitting, and today we're going to talk about my merino. And thank you for the people who complimented me on my hand knit from yesterday. I've got another lovely hand knit on today, and this is an example of the merino yarn. Okay, this is Aran weight merino, which has been dyed in the earth colourway from the Cafe collection. Okay. The merino on the table here is a sustainable merino. It's sourced from New Zealand, and the reason I choose there is because mulesing, which is a process that many of you asked me about, is banned in New Zealand. So we choose that for a sustainable and high quality animal welfare production. In the circle of sustainability, it's important to understand that sheep are actually pretty inherently sustainable little things. You can find out more information about that process if you look at places like the Campaign for Real Wool and British Wool. And I can also go into more detail about that cycle in another video if that's something that you're interested in. Basically, the merino and the sheep cycle as a whole is considered to be inherently sustainable because you're multiply using the sheep to produce your product, which means that it's a more efficient process. And the product at the end of the cycle, which is the wool or the yarn, is compostable rather than creating a waste at the end of it. In between, to make this a more sustainable source of merino, the pasture is diversified to encourage native and wild flowers. The weak point in the loop that many people ask me about is transport, and that's the weak point in most production cycles. The reason why I'm okay with it in this chain is that if I were to opt for a British merino, that wouldn't actually come from the British Islands. It would come from the Falkland Islands, so there would be an equal pretty much amount of transport involved as getting it from New Zealand. Yarn is not like fast fashion when you're evaluating sustainability. Yarn is a long-term process. You use your yarn to make your sweater and then look after it and love it for many years to come. So in terms of that whole cycle, of the amount of time it takes to make something and the impact on the planet, even though the merino comes a long way, the step that comes after it of us making, loving and using it is a very, very long period. So it's not the same as fast fashion transport issues. Okay. What else can we say about merino? Well, moving on to actually making with the merino, it's very interesting that merino is a breed of sheep, but it's also become a brand in the yarn world, and that's because of the wonderful quality of the merino yarn. It has long, smooth fibres, which means that spinning process ends up with a really lovely, smooth yarn, which it has almost no irritation for the skin, which many people think about when they think of that very traditional itchy wool sweater. It's those short fibres and a high lanolin in the yarn that most people are thinking about when they report that. Merino naturally has really long fibres, smooth fibres and lower lanolin, so tends to be just less irritable overall. For myself as a dyer, one of the reasons why I choose merino as one of my two main yarn choices is that it's available to me all year round in a predictable, good quantity, and it takes the yarn, takes the natural, sustainable dyes that I make really well. And we'll talk more about sustainable dye processes in other videos, but they are tricky things to make and do. And the last thing I want to do is complicate that process by going through making the dye and then not having it adhere to the yarn. So I need good matches as far as I can along the process. Coming to the end of what we can say about merino today. The merino is all available on the Loch Ness Knitting website. If this is not your thing, we've got plenty of British Blue-Faced Leicester as well, also for sale on the website, and we'll be talking about that in a bit more detail tomorrow. And before we end the video, video, we're going to have a shout out to another small business in the Highland area. So I'm wearing today my lovely belt, which is from Loch Ness leather. You can find them on all the socials, and they make these gorgeous handmade leather belts. So a lovely Highland business for you to check out. So as usual, if you've got any questions, comments or feedback about the shop talk that we're doing this week, just leave a comment on the socials or send me a little message at lochnessknitting@gmail.com, and join us again tomorrow to find out a little bit more about British Blueface Leicester. Thank you.